In the news this week, as daily cases continue to drop, should a state of emergency remain for the long term to deal with another wave of COVID? An exclusive Q&A with Dr. Andrew Miller.
Will Baston's mission, the Liberal candidate's quest to compete in WA's by-election as Labor pulls out of the race.
A university student's attempt to gate-crash the Premier's press conference as she advocates for abortion rights.
David Jim Penman answers entrepreneurship questions from Perth kids, and later Dr. Mark Duncan-Smith's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. As Western Australia's daily case numbers continue to drop, the public's call to end the state of emergency legislation is on the rise. Despite this, fears of another wave of COVID and the state's current hospitalisation figures may stifle progress. So will WA's state of emergency powers be here to stay for the long term? AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller joins us for an exclusive Q&A. Dr. Miller, thanks for your time. Given that daily cases have been stabilised, how long will the state of emergency remain in Western Australia?
I don't think we'll have emergency powers for the next few years, but I think we will have the need to be able to respond if something goes bad with this virus or with any other in the next little while. So as long as the community is prepared for that, it's like all situations, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Do you believe the state of emergency is here to stay for the long term?
Well, for the long term, the government is going to need to have some sort of control over public health, and how they do that is up to them, whether they have permanent legislation that enables them to do things like insist that people work from home for a while, or reduced crowd limits, or to have mask mandates. Whether they need to do that through emergency public health legislation or another way is up to them, as long as those tools remain available if we get into a situation where there's massive numbers of deaths occurring in the future. And we just don't know enough yet about this virus to know which direction it's going to go in the next 12 months, let alone the next few years.
In what year you reckon the measures will be dropped based on the current trajectory?
Well, you'd be very brave to predict anything, particularly when the trajectory is going down, because we know this is like a roller coaster, this virus. And so we're on the down part of the roller coaster at the moment, but we all know what happens after that. So I won't make any predictions as to what year. The big influenza pandemic of 100 years ago, that mainly burnt itself out in the first couple of years, but then there's other pandemics that have lasted for many years. So we just need to be prepared. We don't need to panic about it, but we do need to understand that this is an ongoing feature of living with this virus. It means that we need to reduce transmission so that people don't get sick and die unnecessarily.
What do you have to say to those people who wants to end the emergency laws now, given the virus may continue for another few years?
Well, people who have taken an ideological stance to a scientific problem. So if you have a belief that you don't think you'll need to bring in controls, that's not scientific. That's just based on an opinion. And that's not a safe way to look after people, particularly vulnerable people. And we're seeing, unfortunately, very high rates of death from this virus in Australia at the moment. We need to just keep an eye on all of the available public health measures, and it'd be silly to take anything off the table right now. We've always had these emergency powers in place to be used in the past, and I think the government's using them appropriately at present.
Dr. Miller, thanks for joining us, and as always, we wish you and your family good health.
Thanks from all of our family. Cheers.
Regional people and issues are at the top of the Liberal Party's agenda, with one of its members setting his sights on representing the community in the North West Central by-election. Will Baston is standing for the needs of people in the electorate, claiming their concerns matter, while calling WA Labor's decision to not run a candidate in the seat disappointing. Reporter Nelson Liu spoke to Mr Baston this week.
Will Baston, thanks for joining us. There's a few more weeks to go until the North West Central by-election officially goes ahead. What are you aiming to achieve in the next few weeks?
My aim in the next 40 days to the election day on the 17th of September is to raise the profile that there is a by-election, that local matters count, regional voice, respecting the regions, getting local people to have their stories shared, and raising their great aspects of the area, as well as the issues that they're facing, so people outside the electorate and in Perth can appreciate what they're dealing with.
What are the most important policies that you'll be looking at?
Yeah, my policy or my position statements are pretty much going to be around standing for local decisions to be made by local people. And basically with that strong regional voice to Parliament, and that comes under the notion of looking at increased regional health services, more local engagement to stop youth crime and to reduce the cost of living, as well as ending the housing shortage.
Premier Mark McGowan has revealed that WA Labor won't be running a candidate in the by-election, and he's justified that. What's your take on the decision?
Matter for the Labor Party to not choose to run in this election. I would say that the locals will have to make a choice of who they are wanting to support in this election. Without the Labor Party running, it's obviously showing that they have not a really interest in North West Central.
Finally, how will you be creating that difference between the Liberal Party, which is your party, and the other candidates you're contesting the seat against?
I'm sticking to the game plan. The game plan is to connect with as many locals on local matters. It's never been about comparing myself to other people. This is an electorate that have various viewpoints, and those viewpoints should be heard, no matter what your background, creed, or viewpoints. Essentially, we should be raising the profile, hearing from the locals, and that's what I'm focused on doing for the next 40 days.
And here are other top stories making news in Perth and WA this weekend.
Transport Minister Rita Saviotti unveiled Perth's new Metronet C Train this afternoon at the Bellevue Rail Manufacturing Facility. The first 6-car carriage has been completed and will undergo testing in the next 6 to 12 months on public tracks. The minister says the train can carry up to 1,200 people during peak hours, 200 more than the current B train set. The 10-year contract will see 246 new C train sets and 6 new Australian rail cars built in Bellevue. It's the first time in nearly 30 years that a locally built train will be operating on the network. A university student has gatecrashed a state government press conference questioning abortion laws as a rally in Perth pushes for legislation to be changed. UWA Student Guild councillor Nicole McEwen joined the Wednesday press conference at a university campus, attempting to ask Premier Mark McGowan a question about the laws before being led away. It comes as the Greens introduced an e-petition to the Parliament on Thursday as part of a rally to change WA's abortion laws. The e-petition, the first the Upper House has ever received, has gained a large response at around 2,500 signatures, coming after protests in WA in the wake of the Roe v. Wade decision. The Greens says it shows WA supports towards decriminalising abortion, while Ms McEwen says her attempts to raise the issue to the Premier is not grandstanding.
I don't think so at all. I think the Premier had come to grandstand about his electric vehicles charging scheme, and I honestly just saw an opportunity to put forward a question that I know a lot of students on my campus are really concerned about.
Western Australia's public housing waiting list has increased to 33,644 people on the 31st of July, according to the latest figures. Among the waitlist, 8,519 applications are priorities. The numbers have increased by 9,716 people compared to June 2020, and an increase of 1,900 people since the beginning of 2022, with 300 people added to the list in the last 2 months. The numbers equate to a 40% increase in the number of Western Australians waiting for affordable public housing as the housing and rental squeeze intensifies.
Demand for disability-inclusive housing appears to be growing, with a Perth property agent giving WAME News an exclusive tour of a disability-friendly unit in Bentley. The unit is wheelchair accessible, the kitchen island can be raised or lowered and used as a bench top, desk, table or meal area, and has space to fit a wheelchair below. Mr. Lee feels that this kind of accommodation helps people with a disability to live independently in a community with disabled and non-disabled people alike. However, accommodation similar to this is not easily available and also requires a lot of design and structural compliance to the NDIA rules and regulations to be considered disability friendly.
I believe this is going to be the future trend of how the disability people should live. The developer or the builders should have more communication between the government needs and to talk through what are the demands and supply.
WA's civil servants are preparing for a protest this coming Wednesday to argue for a higher pay rise. The demonstration comes despite the McGowan government recently increasing their pay offer with a one-off $2,500 cash bonus, followed by 2 years of 3% rise per annum. Mr McGowan said his government has provided the best offer to all civil servants as they battle the cost of living. The Premier also addressed the issue in a letter written to all public workers this week, stating that his government has listened to the workers' demands and thanked them for their hard work.
Yeah, the government's reissued a new offer, which is a much better offer than the one previously on the table. I think most people have welcomed that offer. It helps address some of the cost of living issues. It also acknowledges the work done by many people across the public service in these times, but it's also financially responsible as well.
The founder of the company that employs a legion of gyms, whether it's lawn mowing, dog washing or cleaning, has now discussed entrepreneurship with Perth kids. The talk occurred this week at Cockburn Central. The children, who are aged between 4 to 14 years old, learned via a very special Zoom lesson from David Jim Penman, owner of Jim's Group, that evening. Questions ranging from his favourite food to whether he will ever retire.
Who encouraged you to start a business?
Oh, that's a good question.
It is a good question. Nobody. I just wanted to do it because I wanted a job and I wanted to earn good money and I wanted to be outside. So that's how lawn mowing suited me.
Can I take over your job?
Well, if you want to come and work for Jim's one day, you might be able to, but I'm never going to retire. I'll just die and that'll be the end of me. I hate the idea of retiring. I enjoy work too much. It's so much fun. Never, ever, ever want to retire.
Do I eat chocolate?
Do I like chocolate? I love chocolate. I really, really, really love chocolate.
It's chocolate juice.
Chocolate juice? No way. I like eating chocolate. I love chocolate. I try not to eat too much because it makes you fat and unhealthy if you eat too much. A little bit's okay, but not too much.
Speaking of favourite foods, what's yours, Ivan?
Peking duck.
Oh.
What about you?
I like a good pizza. You can't go wrong with that.
Well, you know what couldn't go wrong?
What?
Roast goose.
Oh, roast goose.
Yeah, now that is a Hong Kong tradition.
I'll have to try that if I ever go to Hong Kong.
It's a must, you cannot not try before you leave. Right? And now, here's AMA-WA President Dr. Mark Duncan-Smith with his COVID-19 update and medical commentary.
Everyone out there, good to see you again. And to say that I'm sick of COVID, and I'm sure you're sick of COVID, and everyone's sick of COVID is an understatement. But unfortunately, the virus is not sick of us. Basically, this virus is a nasty little thing, and it's showing some stuff at the moment, which really is not good. So basically what we're seeing is that we're seeing the BA4, BA5 taking over, and this is happening in Western Australia as well. The reason that's occurring is basically our vaccines aren't as good against BA4, BA5, and they're what's called immune evasive. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Omicron-specific boosters yet, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But the best way we can protect ourselves out there is to make sure that your vaccination is up to date, and so that you and try and avoid catching COVID. COVID is actually showing signs that you want to catch it as least as possible and have it as mild as possible. As mild as possible means getting vaccinated, staying up to date. If you're in the right group, then taking antivirals as well. And you want to catch it as least as possible because there's also evidence that the more times you catch it, the more chance of getting severe symptoms of long COVID. Basically, some studies are actually showing with immunologists, unfortunately, that some people that get infections with COVID actually get worse COVID every time they get COVID. So what happens with that is, unfortunately, COVID in some people can cause T cell depletion. And this sounds really boring, but it's a good reason not to get COVID. T cell depletion means that your ability to fight off COVID the next time is actually less than what it was the first time. So in other words, you get more and more and more severe COVID. So again, you want to get it as fewer times as possible. So that means when you're in a situation where your ability to socially distance might be compromised indoors, well then mask up. It's really simple. It's cheap. It reduces your chance of getting COVID by 20%. And it's just a simple and logical thing to do. So what's on the horizon for us? Well, there's good news on the horizon. COVID is not going to continue to screw with our lives and make it just difficult to live. What we're going to end up with is first of all, an Omicron-specific variant that's already been tested and will be available probably sometime late this year, if not early next year. Also in America, what's very promising is a whole of virus vaccine. Now, what's important about this is because it's whole of virus, then ability to immune evade or become a variant will become irrelevant as far as the actual vaccine goes, because the virus would actually have to fundamentally change into another virus for the vaccine not to be effective. So that's coming in the pipeline as well. And when we have that sort of vaccine, then that's when we're going to see COVID become really very insignificant as the world goes on. Very much the same as polio has become much or insignificant. Now, in saying that, the generation between me and the young people nowadays don't even know what polio is. Whereas for the generation above me, it was a devastating, nasty neurological problem that caused people even to have trouble breathing. And it killed a lot of people. Now, the vaccine for polio has been very, very effective to the point where it was actually pretty much eradicated or thought to be eradicated. But recently we've had polio outbreaks in Europe. Now, what this means is that although it is so much less significant, we always have to be vigilant as far as these viruses go. And that's where COVID will go. Once we get a whole of virus vaccine, it will become a super effective vaccine and will probably create a situation where it's like polio. But again, we've got polio outbreaks now in Europe, and it's something we'll have to keep vigilant forever. So stay safe out there. Avoid getting COVID, and if you get it as hopefully as mild as possible. Take care.
And that's Dr. Mark Duncan-Smith. Now, here is Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. Tonight on 6 News, fears a large outbreak of foot and mouth disease could cost Australia $80 billion. But why have WA Labor MPs now accused lobby groups and the media of fueling a fear campaign? Also, fallout continues after the Victorians Party, which aimed to run more than 100 candidates in the November state election, pulled out in a move labelled extraordinary. And the man accused of carrying out a stabbing attack against author Salman Rushdie enters a not guilty plea in a New York court. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6NewsAU to find us, or head to our website, 6newsau.com. For now, guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.